Welcome back to Seven Shepherds Farm. In the last couple videos, we've been kind of alluding to some of the health concerns we've been having with our sheep. We started feeding, so we started feeding some silage hay or haylage or baleage or whatever you call it in your region. Back when we had our snowstorm, which was January 25th of this year of 26. So we had 8 inches of snow that week. So we went ahead and started feeding hay because our stockpile was covered up. And part of that feeding, we tore into some silage hay and started feeding the big group. We were feeding those 2 silage bales every day and then 2 dry bales every day. So the silage hay is typically higher in protein, so we wanted to give them a little bit, better nutrition. That's one of the main reasons we were feeding that. And we have about 300 bales of it left over from when we ran cattle. And from our research, we knew there was a little bit of a risk, a health risk, as far as feeding that kind of hay to sheep instead of cows. But I guess there's a risk in everything, so we just took the chance and fed that hay. It looked good. It had like a little bit of surface mold on it, but it didn't. I've fed a lot worse silage to cows, so I wasn't really that concerned. We went ahead and unrolled the hay to them for the next couple weeks there. And so I have a list because I got a timeline here of how all this kind of went down. So snowstorm was on January 25th. That's when we started feeding that silage hay. And then for the next 3 weeks or so, we kind of off and on fed silage and dry hay and, kind of mixed that in with them. And then the snow melted during that time too, so they had a little bit of cover. They had some stockpile as well that they were eating. But silage was definitely in that mix for that 3 weeks there. So we actually got the sheep in on Thursday, which is on February 19th. It was a Thursday. And when we got those in closer to the corral, we noticed one of them was kind of walking funny. She wasn't really acting too crazy, but she was kind of walking sideways, kind of like bumping into stuff, like kind of lethargic looking. So we thought that was odd. And so we were kind of, a little bit concerned with that. I can't remember, did we call the vet on that one that same day? We did not call the vet. We just thought it looked weird. So we had one sheep acting funny. And then over that weekend, we had a couple more of them start acting weird. One of them was walking circles. Like I said, the other one was kind of bumping into stuff. So at that point, we did contact our vet. So that was on Monday. We contacted our vet and asked him to come out and just take a look at the whole flock, see what he thought it could be. At this point, we went out that morning and there was probably 10 of them just acting off. So they weren't all walking circles or anything, but we had, I think 1 or 2 of them were walking circles. A couple of them were just kind of not coming down to us. They weren't sticking with the flock. Had droopy ears. It could have been a lot of things in my opinion. At that point, I guess. But the vet came out, took basically one look at the first one that was walking circles, and he's like, "Yeah, you have Listeria." He's like, "Have you been feeding silage hay?" Which we had already told him that over the phone. So we've been feeding silage hay to him. He said that's pretty well guaranteed to be the cause of it. So he knew right away as soon as he looked at him what was going on. Like I said, a couple of them were walking circles, had droopy ears, not staying with the flock. So yeah, Courtney said half their face, one ear might be droopy and the other one might be perked up. Is kind of a weird look. They just looked off. Not all of them are showing like major signs, like walking in circles is like they have it really bad, I think, at that point. So, but it could just be as little as just having a droopy ear, is what I'm talking about as far as like signs of Listeria here. So that was on Monday, February 23rd. So at that point, it had been a full month since we had started feeding that silage hay. And then, so on that Monday, we got what they call just a 4G crumble. It's a antibiotic that you can mix in with their feed, which we don't hardly feed ours anything, but we had been giving them a little bit of soy hulls. So we went and had our local MFA mix up those 4G crumbles with soy hulls and started giving those that Monday. So, and also by Monday, over the weekend, we had already lost 2 ewes to Listeria. And like I said, about 10 more of them were showing signs of it. So we give it to them Monday. You're supposed to give it to them every day. So it was a certain amount you gotta give it to them every day. We were feeding them a pound of soy hulls every day that was mixed in there. So Monday, Tuesday, we were giving the feed. And then by Wednesday, we had already had 6 dead ewes from Listeria. So from over the weekend to Wednesday, we had lost 6 of them from that. And then at Wednesday, it looked like everybody was coming down to feed. Everybody was getting their, medication in the feed. I didn't notice really any signs of anybody else walking funny or with droopy ears, but it's kind of hard to tell, when you have a bunch of them out there. There might be some mixed in that we missed. But so Wednesday was starting to look up. Thursday looked really good. I didn't notice any more getting it. We kind of thought, we might have it made. And then by Friday, we noticed 3 more that were showing signs. Like I said, we might have missed those on the other days. They might have just been mixed in with the rest of the flock, but they didn't stand out to us anyway until Friday. So Friday we saw 3 more. None of them had died. They were just acting extremely funny. They're off by themselves. A couple of them wouldn't even get up. They were just, laying there basically, but they were still alive. So then by Monday, so this is March 1st, this Monday, that's when our treatment ends. So we're supposed to give them that 4G crumbles for 7 days. So we did that. Everybody pretty well, I think, got what they needed. As of Monday, we still had those 3 that are showing signs. They're not acting right. They're not doing very good, but they are still alive. So it's kind of weird. One day we go out there and they're laying on the ground, and the next day they'll be up walking, and kind of almost acting normal, and then the next day they won't get up again. So at this point, we think that 99% of them are going to be just fine. So like I said, we've completed the treatment on the antibiotics. As far as we know, they should be good. The Listeria should be killed in any of them that, got the antibiotics. I don't know what to think about the ones that are still kind of, showing signs of Listeria, but they're still living. So at this point, that's to be determined, I guess. And today's Wednesday, so those 3, it's been like that for several days now. The 3 of them are still kind of struggling, but they're still living. And everybody else, I haven't seen a single sign. And it's those same 3 that have been struggling for the last several days. I haven't seen any signs in any of the other sheep. I'm pretty certain they're over it. But we did get a comment on, I believe it was our last YouTube video. It was a guy. He's actually got his own channel. It's a Dorper Ranch 3748. Thank you for the input. He's actually got his own feed mill, I believe, and he said he mixes it's a toxin binder is what it is, and he puts it in his mineral. So it's supposed to help with Listeria. So if you are going to feed any kind of haylage or any kind of silage, you might want to reach out to him and maybe get some of that toxin binder to put in with your mineral before you start feeding silage. I think it does help. I think it helps to a certain extent even after they've eaten it, but it's more preventative from my understanding, to prevent from getting Listeria and not necessarily a treatment. But we are working with our local MFA on a similar product, basically what he was talking about, to mix in with some more soy hulls and then give that to the sheep to kind of clean them up, basically. If anybody's showing any kind of signs or having any lingering effects of this Listeria, hopefully that toxin binder will take care of that. But I just wanted to do a little update on kind of the herd health for all these sheep, and we've kind of, like I said, kind of mentioned it in a couple of videos why we're not feeding the silage hay anymore. They really liked it, so it's kind of it's a bummer that we can't feed it. At least I'm not going to feed it. I'm not going to take the risk in feeding it. It might be totally fine to feed even the same bales to a cow. I think a lot of it has to do with the size of, the sheep are just so much smaller. So that's kind of our silage / Listeria saga. I think we're more or less in the clear. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm definitely feeling a lot better than I was last week on Monday. So last week Monday was kind of a scary day, but at least the vet, he jumped right on it and got us what we needed and got 99% of them snapped out of it. So like I said, I think we're in the clear. So hopefully that helps somebody. Thanks for watching.